In 1913, a photograph was taken of a baby girl, a picture of pure innocence. But when archivists zoomed in on a small symbol hanging from a chain around her neck, they uncovered a secret society and a truth more horrifying than anyone could imagine. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a brand, a designation for a child whose fate had been decided before she could even walk, and the organization that put it there never truly went away. Before we dive into this shocking discovery, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our investigations into history's darkest secrets. Dr. Eris Thorne had been working as a digital archivist at the Huntington Library for 7 years. His job was simple but important. He took old photographs and documents and turned them into digital files so they could be preserved forever. Most days were routine. He'd scan yellowing papers, faded letters, and countless family portraits from estates that had been donated to the library. But on a cold Tuesday morning in November, something changed everything. The library had just received a massive collection from an estate sale in Boston. The previous owner had died without any heirs, and their attorney had found boxes upon boxes of photographs dating back to the early 1900s. No one knew who most of the people in the photos were. They came with no names, no dates written on the back, just hundreds of anonymous faces frozen in time. Dr. Thorne started with what looked like the oldest box. Inside were dozens of formal portraits, the kind wealthy families had taken in professional studios. He picked up one particular photograph that caught his eye. It showed a baby girl, maybe 6 months old, dressed in an elaborate white christening gown. The lace was so fine you could see every delicate pattern even in the old photograph. The baby's face was round and sweet, with large eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. Everything about the portrait screamed wealth and privilege. He placed the photograph on his high-resolution scanner. This machine could capture details invisible to the naked eye. As the scanner warmed up, Dr. Thorne examined the photo more closely. The baby sat propped up on what looked like a velvet cushion. Behind her was a painted backdrop of clouds and cherubs, typical for portraits of that era. The photograph itself was in remarkable condition, with barely any fading or damage. The scan began, and Dr. Thorne watched as the image appeared on his computer screen in extraordinary detail. He zoomed in to check the quality, starting with the baby's face. The resolution was perfect. He could see individual strands of the baby's fine hair. He moved the image down to examine the christening gown. The lacework was even more intricate than he'd thought. And then he saw it. Around the baby's neck, barely visible in the original photograph, was a thin silver chain. Hanging from it was a small pendant. Dr. Thorne zoomed in. Further. The pendant wasn't a cross or a heart or any religious symbol he recognized. It was a flat silver disc about the size of a dime. Engraved on it was a strange geometric design. It looked like a bird, maybe a raven, but one of its wings appeared broken or bent at an unnatural angle. The bird was enclosed in a perfect circle with small markings around the edge that might have been letters or numbers. Something about the symbol made Dr. Thorne uncomfortable. It seemed wrong, somehow, out of place on a baby's portrait. He'd seen thousands of old photographs, and jewelry in children's portraits was always meaningful. A cross showed religious faith. A locket held a loved one's picture. But this symbol was different. It looked almost official, like a badge or identification tag. He saved the high-resolution image and opened his database of historical symbols. For 3 hours, he searched through every catalog he could access. Masonic symbols, religious emblems, family crests, military insignias. Nothing matched. The broken-winged raven in a circle didn't appear anywhere in his resources. Frustrated but intrigued, Dr. Thorne flipped the photograph over. In the bottom corner, barely visible, was a photographer's stamp. It read, Whitmore Studios, Boston, Massachusetts. Below that, someone had written in pencil so faint he could barely read it. 1913. This gave him something to work with. The Huntington Library had extensive records from old photography studios, especially prestigious ones from major cities. Whitmore Studios had been one of the best in Boston, serving wealthy families from the 1890s until it closed in 1938. Dr. Thorne pulled up the digitized Whitmore Studios records. The studio had kept meticulous logs of every portrait session. He found the 1913 ledger and began scrolling through entries. January, February, March. Each entry listed the client's name, the date, and what type of portrait was taken. Then he found it. April 15th, 1913. But where the client's name should have been, there was only the foundation. And where the subject's name should have been, it simply said, Isolde, Ward number 12. Ward number 12. That phrase sent a chill down Dr. Thorne's spine. You didn't number children unless you had many of them. And the word ward suggested these weren't family members. They were children under someone's guardianship or control. He searched the entire Whitmore Studios collection for any other mention of the foundation. He found 17 more entries between 1909 and 1921. Each one was for a child's portrait. Each child was identified only by a first name and a ward number: Isolde, Marcus, Theodora, Felix. The numbers went up to 37. Now Dr. Thorne needed to know what the foundation was. He expanded his search beyond the photography records. He combed through Boston newspapers from that era, looking for any mention of an organization called the Foundation. For days, he found nothing. Then, in a society page from the Boston Herald dated June 1911, he found a single line: Members of the Foundation for Human Excellence gathered Tuesday evening at the Copley Plaza Hotel for their annual benefit dinner. The Foundation for Human Excellence. The name sounded philanthropic, even progressive for its time, but something about it felt wrong. Dr. Thorne kept digging. He found 3 more mentions in society pages over the next 2 years. The foundation appeared to be a charity organization. They held fancy dinners and claimed to support child welfare and education, but there were never any details about their actual work. Then Dr. Thorne found something that changed everything. In the archives, there was a collection of personal papers from a doctor, Cornelius Blackwood, a prominent Boston physician who had died in 1943. Among his papers was a leather journal marked, "Private, destroy upon my death." Obviously, no one had followed that instruction. The journal's first entry was dated September 1908. Dr. Blackwood wrote about being invited to join an exclusive organization dedicated to improving the human race. He was honored, he wrote, to be selected for such important work. The organization was called the Foundation for Human Excellence. As Dr. Thorne read through the journal, the true nature of the foundation became clear. This was no charity. It was a eugenics society, one that believed in creating a perfect human race through selective breeding and scientific intervention. But unlike other eugenics movements of that era, which focused on preventing certain people from having children, the foundation took a different approach. They acquired children. According to Dr. Blackwood's journal, the foundation identified infants with what they considered superior genetic potential. Sometimes these were illegitimate children from wealthy families who wanted to hide a scandal. Sometimes they were children from poor families who had the right physical characteristics: blue eyes, fair skin, symmetric features, signs of intelligence. The foundation would approach these families with offers of money or threats of exposure. They always got the children they wanted. But the foundation didn't place these children for adoption. Instead, they were taken to a compound in rural Massachusetts called Ravenscroft. The name finally explained the symbol on the pendant. The broken-winged raven was the foundation's emblem. Dr. Blackwood explained its meaning in chilling detail. Even the most perfect specimen, he wrote, must be broken down and rebuilt according to scientific principles. The broken wing represented the necessity of destroying a child's natural will in order to reshape them into something greater. At Ravenscroft, the children were raised according to strict scientific protocols. Every aspect of their lives was controlled and monitored. Their diet was precisely calculated. Their education followed experimental psychological theories. They were subjected to tests measuring everything, from reaction time to pain tolerance. The weak were culled from the program and sent to asylums with falsified records showing them as orphans with mental deficiencies. The strong continued in the program. Dr. Blackwood's journal contained detailed notes about specific children. When Dr. Thorne found the entry about Isolde, his hands started shaking. She had been acquired at 3 months old. Her mother was the teenage daughter of a prominent banker who couldn't afford a scandal. Her father was unknown, but the foundation's doctors had determined she possessed exceptional genetic qualities based on her physical measurements and response to stimuli. Isolde was placed in what the foundation called the intelligence cohort. These children were subjected to extreme isolation to enhance their mental capabilities. They were kept in separate rooms, allowed no toys or comfort items, and exposed to complex mathematical and linguistic patterns from infancy. The theory was that without emotional distractions, their brains would develop pure intellectual capacity. The journal entries about Isolde continued for several years. Dr. Blackwood noted her exceptional progress in pattern recognition and memory tests, but he also noted concerning behaviors. By age 5, she had developed what he called an unsettling stillness. She rarely cried, never laughed, and would sit motionless for hours staring at the wall. The Foundation considered this a success. They had eliminated unnecessary emotional responses. In 1918, when Isolde would have been 6 years old, the entries about her became irregular. Dr. Blackwood mentioned that she had begun showing signs of what he called regression. She had started speaking to invisible companions and would scratch geometric patterns into her skin with her fingernails. The last entry about her was dated March 1919. It simply said, "Isolde transferred to the Hartford Institute." Project terminated. Dr. Thorne knew what the Hartford Institute was. It had been one of Connecticut's most notorious insane asylums, closed in the 1970s after decades of patient abuse scandals. He searched the Hartford Institute records, which had been digitized as part of a historical preservation project. He found admission records for dozens of children between 1915 and 1925, all listed as orphans with various mental disturbances. Many had only first names. There were 3 different Isoldes admitted during those years. The journal revealed that the Foundation had placed at least 200 children through their program between 1908 and 1926. Those who succeeded in the conditioning were given new identities and placed with wealthy families who were members of the Foundation. They were told their children had died in infancy, and these were specially selected replacements who would bring honor to their family names. These children grew up to become doctors, lawyers, professors, and business leaders, never knowing their true origins. But Dr. Blackwood's journal suggested something even more disturbing. The Foundation hadn't disbanded in 1926 as public records suggested. They had simply become more careful. The journal's final entry, written just days before Dr. Blackwood's death in 1943, mentioned that the Foundation was evolving with the times. They were moving away from the compound model and integrating their work into legitimate institutions, hospitals, orphanages, schools for gifted children. Dr. Thorne realized he needed to know what had happened to the other children in those photographs. He pulled up the Whitmore Studios records again and made a list of every child photographed for the Foundation. Then he began the painstaking work of trying to trace them through historical records. Some appeared in asylum records like Isolde. Others simply vanished from all documentation after a certain age. But a disturbing number appeared to have been successfully integrated into society. Dr. Thorne found a Marcus who had become a federal judge, a Theodora who had married a senator, a Felix who had founded a pharmaceutical company. All of them had official biographies that began in their teenage years with adoption by prominent families. Their early childhoods were mysteries. The most chilling discovery came when Dr. Thorne found a list of the Foundation's board members from 1920. The names read like a who's who of American industry and politics: banking families, railroad tycoons, university presidents, hospital directors. These weren't fringe fanatics. They were some of the most powerful people in the country, and their descendants were still powerful today. Dr. Thorne cross-referenced the board members with modern genealogical records. Many of their family lines had continued to hold positions of influence. He found current federal judges, university administrators, and hospital board members who were direct descendants of the Foundation's original members. Of course, this didn't mean they knew about or supported their ancestors' activities, but it raised troubling questions about inherited wealth and power built on such dark foundations. The pendant around baby Isolde's neck took on new meaning. It wasn't jewelry, it was a brand, a mark of ownership, a sign that this child belonged to the Foundation. She had been catalogued, numbered, and processed like inventory. The portrait that seemed so innocent was actually documentation of a transaction, proof that Ward Number 12 had been successfully acquired. Dr. Thorne wondered how many similar photographs were sitting in archives around the country. How many innocent-looking portraits of children actually documented this hidden history? How many families had albums containing pictures of children who had been part of the Foundation's program without ever knowing it? He thought about Isolde, that baby in the white christening gown. If she had been admitted to the Hartford Institute in 1919, she would have been 7 years old. The asylum's records showed that many child patients died there from disease, neglect, and abuse, but some survived and were released as adults, usually into menial jobs with no support system. If Isolde had survived and been released, She would have been in her 30s by the time the asylum closed. She could have lived into the 1970s or beyond. She could have had children of her own, never knowing her true origins or what had been done to her. The Foundation's experiments represented a dark chapter in American history that had been almost completely erased. Unlike the eugenics programs that became infamous after World War II, the Foundation had operated in perfect secrecy. They left behind no manifestos, no public declarations, no obvious evidence, just scattered documents, cryptic journal entries, and photographs of children wearing strange pendants. Dr. Thorne completed his report on the photograph and the Foundation. He documented everything he had found, creating a comprehensive file that would be added to the historical record. But he knew this was just the beginning. Those Whitmore Studios records showed at least 37 children photographed for the Foundation. The Blackwood Journal suggested there had been hundreds more. Each one had been a real person with a stolen life. The most unsettling part was Dr. Blackwood's final assertion that the Foundation had evolved rather than disbanded. If that was true, then somewhere out there in legitimate institutions with different names and modern methods, the work might still be continuing. The broken-winged raven might have been replaced with a different symbol or no symbol at all. The compounds might have been replaced with foster homes or private schools. The goals might have shifted from creating perfect humans to other forms of control and manipulation. As Dr. Thorne filed away the photograph of baby Isolde, he couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was meant to stay hidden. The Foundation had operated for decades without exposure. Their members had been rich and powerful enough to erase most traces of their existence. The only reason he had found anything was because of a few overlooked documents and one old photograph with a telltale symbol. He wondered how many other secrets were hiding in plain sight in the archives. How many innocent-looking photographs contained evidence of forgotten crimes. How many children's faces stared out from old portraits, wearing symbols of organizations that had claimed ownership of their lives? The portrait of Isolde now sits in the Huntington Library's digital archive, available for anyone to see. But without context, it still looks like nothing more than a sweet photograph of a baby in a christening gown. Only when you zoom in and see that strange pendant, that broken-winged raven, do you begin to understand that this photograph documents something far darker. It's evidence of a time when powerful people believed they could own children, experiment on them, and reshape humanity according to their vision. The Foundation for Human Excellence may be gone, but the ideas that drove it have appeared throughout history in different forms. The belief that some people have the right to control and shape others, especially children, in the name of progress or improvement has never fully disappeared. It just finds new expressions, new justifications, and new methods. That innocent baby portrait from 1913 reminds us that evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it looks like charity. Sometimes it looks like progress. Sometimes it looks like a sweet photograph of a baby wearing a pretty pendant. But when you look closer, when you zoom in on the details, you can see the truth. That pendant wasn't jewelry. It was a mark of ownership. That portrait wasn't a family keepsake. It was documentation of a crime. And that baby wasn't loved. She was collected. The story of Isolde and the Foundation for Human Excellence is a reminder that history's darkest chapters are often hidden in plain sight. They're in the archives, in the forgotten journals, in the photographs that no one looks at twice. Every old picture tells a story, but sometimes that story is darker than we could ever imagine. What other secrets are waiting to be discovered in dusty archives and forgotten collections? What other innocent-looking photographs contain evidence of unimaginable horrors? The truth is out there, waiting for someone to zoom in and see what's really there. Like this video and subscribe for more secrets that history tried to bury. What you see in an old photograph is never the full story.